Why did no one ever see her coming? The question haunted her with every mission, every shot fired, every silent step through a world of men who underestimated her. The rifle report split the Afghan night like a thunderclap on a cloudless sky. Through the scope, she held her breath, unflinching as the Russian assassin crumpled backward, a neat hole in his forehead, crimson leaking onto the rocky earth. His weapon, once pressed against a wounded Navy SEAL's temple, fell useless into the dust. Americans always send boys to die, had mocked in thick Moscow-accented English just moments before. Not this time, she whispered to herself, her voice dissolving into the vast emptiness of the Hindu Kush. The name had been a ghost in her mind for decades, once a specter in Bosnia. Now his shadow darkened these mountains. Her hands moved with quiet efficiency, breaking down the rifle before the man's body had even finished collapsing. No celebration, no pause, just work. The SEAL she had saved was still breathing, but approaching him would mean exposing her cover. The rules of survival pressed cold against her chest, better to remain unseen. A phantom in the... Her satellite phone vibrated, a coded message. Overlook Valley, Unit 113 confirmed, compromised. Her eyes hardened, blue as frozen water. She read it again, deleted it, and for the first time in years she let herself feel the sting of vindication. She had been right all along. Colonel, decorated, respected, untouchable, was a traitor. Her suspicions, dismissed by superiors as paranoia, had never left her. General's words from 2 decades earlier, whispered back like an echo. The most dangerous thing in Afghanistan isn't the Taliban. It's the secrets we buried here during the Soviet years. Tonight, those secrets would claw their way back into the open. She had gone by many names in her life, but in the files no one admitted existed, she was Athena 12. A woman erased from rosters and records, a ghost even in the places she had bled. The descended, its rotors thumping like a failing heartbeat. Below, forward operating base horizon sprawled across the mountainside, prefab barracks, razor wire, concrete barriers, an island of steel and sandbags in the endless rock. March 2002, 3 months after Tora Bora, Washington had declared victory. The Taliban routed, scattered, war over, banners claimed, but the Hindu Kush didn't care for declarations. Here in this valley, victory was a lie. Dust swirled as the helicopter touched down. 4 bodies draped in flags were carried off in silence. 4 more sons of America who would never see their homes again. 4 more folded letters for mothers who would cling to yellow ribbons on oak trees back home. Lieutenant Michael, Iron Mike, stood motionless as the procession passed. At 43, his face bore the weary lines of too many wars, more than most generals could claim. A scar dragged from his eye to his mouth twitched faintly, the only betrayal of emotion as his men were carried past him. He had led 12 operators into Overlook Valley 3 days ago. Only he returned. The screams still lived in his dreams, brothers stumbling like drunk men, compasses spinning, rifles aimed at shadows. He had seen warriors crumble into children, terrified of threats they couldn't see. They never had a chance, he said later in his debriefing, voice flat, mechanical. Not Taliban, not professional, coordinated, we never saw them. And somewhere in the shadows had listened, calm, still, dialing a number from memory, speaking Russian into a secure line. She arrives within the hour, he told the voice. It's her, Blackwood from Bosnia. A pause, then the cultured voice of a man who had haunted her for years. Then she must join the others in the valley, as she should have in Bosnia. The second helicopter arrived as the base froze in collective curiosity. Soldiers paused, eyes drawn to the landing pad, expecting perhaps a general, a desk officer in crisp uniform. Instead, a woman stepped off, mid-40s, not tall, not beautiful, not forgettable either. She moved with economy, weight balanced on the balls of her feet. Her fatigues were standard issue, but her eyes were not. Piercing blue, scanning every angle of the base as though threats no one else saw. Lieutenant Colonel Blackwood, the Pentagon's assessment specialist. That was the cover story, but the way she moved said otherwise. The way she favored her left side, an old wound, healed but never forgiven, whispered of battles long before Afghanistan. Baghdad, 1991. A warehouse, a chemical lab, a beam crashing down on her ribs, the Russian scientist escaping into the dark. A young communications soldier sneered as she passed. That's who they send to fix this mess, middle-aged paper pusher. His buddy snorted, PowerPoint Ranger, gonna tell us we're fighting the war wrong. But an older man, Master Sergeant Cooper, Vietnam veteran, froze when he saw her. His face drained pale. Jesus Christ, he muttered to himself. She died in Mogadishu. I saw the body bag. Then he turned, walking away like he had seen a ghost. Colonel, the base commander, greeted her formally. Welcome to Horizon. I trust your flight was uneventful. As uneventful as Taliban airspace allows, she replied, voice soft, edged with steel. I want your tactical reports, now, and I need to speak with your surviving SEAL. Hollow eyes, scar twitching, skeptical, angry. With respect, ma'am, we don't need an assessment. We need reinforcements. We need air support that doesn't take 40 minutes to arrive. Blackwood met his stare. No flinch, no condescension. I'm not here to count bullet casings. Tell me what you felt in that valley, not just what you saw, what your instincts whispered. He blinked. The words were strange but familiar. That was how operators debriefed each other, not analysts, not bureaucrats. For the first time since her arrival, his hostility faltered. She asked about wind currents, echoes, the way the valley bent sound and air. He watched her sketch airflow and sound maps with a speed that made his throat tighten. This was no desk officer. When her leather wallet fell open, just for a second, he glimpsed an old photograph. Women in plain clothes before an unmarked building. In the corner, faded ink. Athena, 1991. He wanted to ask, but she had already snapped it shut. Instead, she leaned closer. Your men reported a smell, didn't they? Sweet, like almonds. His blood ran cold. Yes, I thought it was the trees or my mind. No, she said softly, not your mind. In the medical tent, a wounded SEAL whispered the same memory. Sweet almonds, disorientation, fear like a child in the dark, had suggested it was all stress. But she knew better. Bosnia had smelled the same, and she had watched her team turn on itself in that poison valley. Later, she found Cooper in the shadows of a supply tent. He stared at her as though time had folded. They said you died in Mogadishu. Reports lie, she answered. So do people, he muttered. When she pressed him, his words cracked. It's happening again. Bosnia, Unit 113. Yes, she said, and this time it's worse. But his eyes betrayed something else. Knowledge, fear, guilt. And when she asked him the question that had haunted her for years, who had betrayed her team in Bosnia, he did not deny it. By dawn, she knew the truth. She was not just here to save 2 missing SEALs. She was walking back into the jaws of a trap crafted for her, was waiting. Cooper and were part of it, and the valley itself had become a laboratory of madness. As the first helicopters prepared to lift for the rescue mission, she tightened the straps of her plate carrier, her fingers brushing the photo hidden in her wallet. Her old team, her old ghosts. She had promised herself she would never walk into another ambush. And yet she was going. Because 2 men were still alive, because she would not abandon them. Because dignity didn't speak, it simply acted. And somewhere was smiling, knowing she would not be able to resist the kill zone. Why did the mountains feel heavier that morning? Why did the air itself carry warning, as though the valley had been waiting for them? 500 hours. Fob horizon stirred under the dim blue of pre-dawn. Operators strapped gear, checked weapons, adjusted straps with mechanical precision. Rituals performed not for comfort but for survival. Every snap of Velcro, every metallic click of a chambered round, a prayer said without words. Lieutenant moved among them like a shadow, his voice low, steady, reassuring. He had buried his grief beneath the mask of command. His men needed his steadiness more than his sorrow. 15 operators in total. Veterans. Hardened, disciplined. But no man steps into a valley that has already claimed brothers without feeling the weight of ghosts pressing on his shoulders. Blackwood stood apart, not unwelcome but not part of them either. Her plate carrier was worn, not standard issue. Her braid tucked tight against her neck. She looked like she belonged, yet carried an air that unsettled the younger SEALs. The kind of presence that whispered she had been through hell and had chosen to return anyway. Master Sergeant, the medic, watched her with a measured gaze. In her hands he saw no clumsiness, no hesitation. And when she slipped him a small injector, unmarked, unknown, his instincts told him she was giving him more than medicine. She was giving him truth. "A chemical agent," she said quietly. "Cognitive disruption, fear amplification. I've seen it before. This counteragent won't make you immune, but it may keep you alive." Turned the device in his weathered hand. It wasn't standard issue, not from any American arsenal, yet something in her tone made him pocket it without question. He had seen enough wars to know when someone carried knowledge heavier than orders. Across the tent, watched the exchange with cold eyes, his uniform crisp, his posture perfect. He played the role of officer with ease, yet his gaze lingered too long as though measuring which of them would break first. The briefing began. His voice rolled like steel polished with false concern. He pointed at maps, outlined insertion points, spoke of rescue and precision, but every word felt rehearsed, calculated. "We will insert simultaneously," he explained. "Alpha team through the eastern pass under Lieutenant, Bravo team under from the south, Charlie team from the west. Overwatch, we move fast, secure the valley, extract our missing men, minimal exposure, maximum efficiency." The operators listened, nodding in professional silence. Yet unease rippled in the air. They knew. They had heard whispers. Overlook Valley had swallowed 3 teams whole, men like them, skilled, trained, and careful. Lieutenant from Charlie team finally broke the silence. "Sir, with respect, the last 3 missions followed this same protocol, and all ended in ambush. Shouldn't we adjust tactics? Maybe night infiltration, or high-altitude insertion?" His jaw tightened. "Not possible. The timeline is urgent. Intelligence suggests our men are in imminent danger. We move now." It was a lie. Blackwood felt it in her bones, wanted urgency. He wanted no time for questions. Another SEAL, Wilson, raised his voice. "What about air support? Last time, QRF took 40 minutes to reach the valley." "2 Apache on standby," replied. "Response time under 15 minutes. His careful phrasing didn't escape Blackwood. "Should be, not will be." She said nothing. Not yet. But her mind every detail, every crack in his performance. When the briefing ended, pulled aside, his voice hushed but deliberate. "Watch her, Lieutenant. Blackwood, she's not what she seems. I've seen this before. Intelligence officers who spent too long in the field. Paranoia sets in. They see conspiracies everywhere. She could endanger this mission." Studied him carefully. The words were convincing, reasonable even, but something inside him hesitated. Blackwood's presence unsettled him, yes, but not because she was paranoid, because she was too calm, too precise. She had the bearing of someone who had walked through this nightmare before. "I'll keep an eye on her," said carefully. Nodded satisfied, but's tone had carried no promise. The operators dispersed for final checks. Blackwood adjusted her, combat pants, tactical shirt, plate carrier molded by years of use, not the attire of an analyst, watched her from across the tarmac. A question gnawed at him. "Who are you really?" She caught his gaze, gave him the faintest nod. Not reassurance, not apology, a signal you're right to doubt, trust your instincts. By the time the rotors thundered overhead, the decision was already made. They were walking into a trap, and she was walking into it willingly. Because and Collins were still alive, and because she could not abandon them, even knowing the valley would demand its price. The helicopters lifted into the rising dawn, blades slicing thin air, engines howling against the mountains. 3 birds carrying 3 teams, shadows against the jagged ridges. Inside the lead helicopter, Alpha Team tightened straps and checked chambers. His voice cut through the roar, steady and sharp. Standard operating procedures end when boots hit ground. This enemy is disciplined, coordinated, expect deception. Communicate, report anything unusual immediately. One of the younger SEALs, Parker, glanced at Blackwood, his voice edged with curiosity. What exactly are we walking into, ma'am? The last briefings didn't say much about what hit the other teams. Her eyes flicked across the cabin, hard, unflinching. You'll smell it first, sweet, like almonds, then disorientation, fear, irrational panic. It won't feel natural because it is. The injection Sergeant distributed will help, but awareness is your greatest weapon. Remember, not every danger you face in that valley will be real. Fight through it. The words landed heavy. These were warriors trained to face bullets, bombs, blades, but fear that came from within, fear that whispered lies into the brain, that was another enemy altogether. Another SEAL leaned forward. And who has that kind of tech? Taliban doesn't. No, Blackwood agreed softly, they don't. The rest of her answer hung unspoken, swallowed by the engine's thunder. Below, the valley appeared, a natural bowl surrounded by knife-edged ridges, beautiful, timeless, deadly, a place carved by nature to trap men who thought themselves invincible. 2 minutes to touchdown, the pilot's voice crackled, LZ clear. Dust swirled as the first bird descended. Alpha Team deployed in formation, weapons sweeping arcs, eyes sharp. The lifted again, vanishing into the sky as though eager to escape the ground it had just delivered them to. For a moment silence, just the wind, just the rocks, just the weight of unseen eyes. Gave the signal. Alpha moved forward deeper into the pass. Blackwood's gaze swept the disguised. Rocks shifted from natural positions. The valley had already been prepared. Bravo checked in. Through Southern Pass, clear, moving to phase line. Charlie followed. Overwatch position secured, no movement observed. It was too easy, too quiet. Blackwood leaned toward, voice low. They're here already, watching. He nodded grimly. His men felt it too. The valley wasn't empty, it was waiting. Then's voice broke over comms, sharp and urgent. Alpha, this is Charlie. Multiple contacts on Northern Ridge, setting up crew-served weapons, not Taliban, disciplined, professional. Before could respond, gunfire erupted. The valley cracked alive with echoes. Charlie's channel filled with chaos. Taking fire, Johnson's hit. We're pinned. Bravo, divert, support Charlie, barked, already signaling Alpha to shift positions. Blackwood grabbed his arm. Wait, this is exactly what they want, split teams, confusion. I'm not leaving my men to die, snapped. Then adapt, she pressed. Send half, keep half, they expect us to panic, don't give them what they want. His jaw clenched. Then he nodded. Orders flew. Half of Alpha peeled toward the west. The rest advanced with him and Blackwood toward the figures now appearing on the valley floor. 2 men, American uniforms, stumbling, weak, and Collins. His breath caught, it's them. Blackwood lifted her binoculars, studied the movement, too steady, too uniform, her voice was grim. Not right, they're bait. But could not look away. His men, his responsibility. They advanced, and the trap tightened. Smoke grenades, sweet almond air, comms jamming, sniper fire from unseen perches. And above it all, the sudden roar of another helicopter, not American, Russian, Me-17 sweeping in low. Figures poured out, professional, masked, disciplined, not insurgents, not militia, something older, something trained for this exact kill box. And then from the side door he appeared. Silver hair beneath a cap, eyes sharp as steel, calm, cold, certain. Blackwood froze. The years fell away. Bosnia came back like a wound reopened. The man who had hunted her. The man who had orchestrated the slaughter of her team. And now here, waiting for her. Her whisper was lost in the valley's chaos. So this is your trap. Only watched, confident, amused, certain she would step forward into his kill zone. Why did the smoke feel alive? Why did every breath claw at their lungs with the taste of almonds? The grenades hissed, pouring their gray-white clouds across the valley floor. Thick, clinging, unnatural. Within seconds, visibility collapsed. Edges of rocks blurred. Figures vanished. Even sound warped, echoes splitting and scattering as though the valley itself wanted to confuse them. Gas masks now, Blackwood's command cut sharp through the haze. She was already pulling hers on, fingers steady despite the chaos. Steam followed, fumbling slightly in the thick air, their training locking into place before panic could spread. The almond-sweet poison pressed at the seams of their masks, whispering at the edges of their thoughts. Not pain, not burning, worse. A slow rising fear as if the smoke itself carried nightmares. Parker stiffened, rifle jerking side to side. They're here, moving 3 o'clock. There's no one, another SEAL shouted. Blackwood spun, caught Parker by the harness. Her voice was sharp, grounding. It's the compound, fight it. What you see is not what's real. But reality was hardly safer. Through the haze, 2 figures staggered closer, and Collins. Their uniforms were torn, faces pale, eyes glassy and vacant, still alive, still trapped. His chest tightened. His men, he could see them. He had left others behind before, but not like this. Not breathing, not staring at him like ghosts halfway between life and death. Hold position, Blackwood warned, her tone steel. It's a setup. But's boots had already shifted forward. Duty pulled at him like chains. The figures raised their hands in eerie unison. From their sleeves dropped grenades, clattering, bouncing, smoke pouring thicker. Down, Blackwood slammed into the dirt just as another wave of gas spread. Through the haze, and Collins crumpled like discarded marionettes. Whether dead, unconscious, or worse, neither moved again. The valley erupted. Gunfire cracked from the ridges, precise, disciplined. Not the wild bursts of Taliban rifles. Controlled, professional volleys, each round seeking flesh. Charlie team's comms filled with chaos. Pinned. We're pinned 2 down, God, I can't. Static swallowed the rest. Bravo tried to flank but fell under machine gun arcs from the northern slope. The air was filled with fire, yet every bullet felt orchestrated, each team herded like cattle into kill lanes. And then came the sound that made Blackwood's blood run cold, the low thunder of rotor blades. Not the Apache, not American, lighter, faster, predatory. The Mi-17 cut over the ridge, its Russian engine snarling. It dipped low, confident, descending toward the battlefield it already owned. The side doors slid open. Figures spilled out, black tactical gear, faces masked, movements precise. They didn't fire wildly. They moved like men who had drilled this exact moment countless times. Unit 113. And then she saw him. Silver hair, sharp posture, a stillness in his presence that felt more dangerous than any weapon. Colonel. 7 years collapsed into nothing. Bosnia returned in a heartbeat, the screams of her team, the sickly sweetness in the air, the confusion, the betrayal. His eyes on her even then, watching as her men fell apart. And now here, smiling faintly, as though the valley, the teams, the war itself were merely his stage. Followed her gaze, saw the man standing calm amidst chaos. That's him. Yes, her voice cracked almost imperceptibly. That's him. knelt beside and Collins, examined them with clinical detachment, gestured for his operators to begin collecting samples of blood, tissue, fluids. "They're treating them like lab rats," muttered, disgust deep in his tone. "Because they are," Blackwood replied coldly. "Test subjects, that's all they ever were to him." His jaw tightened. "Then we get them out." But the situation was worse than even he imagined. From the far side of the helicopter, another figure emerged. Not Russian, not masked. American. His hair neat, his movements practiced, his face unmistakable. Not in uniform but in tactical gear. Not leading Americans, assisting Russians. His voice carried faintly across the chaos as he gestured to, pointing, explaining. His throat went dry. "Son of a, he's feeding them our playbook." The truth landed heavy as a rifle butt to the chest. Betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It wasn't whispers or suspicions. It had a face, his superior, his commander. And beside her, Blackwood's expression shifted. Not surprise, confirmation, the final piece of a puzzle she had long feared to name aloud. "He's been part of it since Bosnia," she whispered. "Gave everything." His breath came hard through his mask, fury mixed with the acrid taste of betrayal. "So what now? How do we fight when our own commander is working against us?" Blackwood's eyes never left, her voice was calm, deliberate. "We don't fight their plan, we rewrite it. They think they've accounted for every move. They think they know us. That's their weakness." A sniper round cracked into the rock inches from his head. Dust sprayed across his visor. "Options are running thin, Colonel," he growled. She scanned the battlefield, calculated, adapted. Every choice was risk, every path a trap, yet something in her eyes burned brighter than fear. "We take," she said at last. "Blinked, take him. He's their asset, their translator, their bridge to our systems. Without him loses his advantage, and with him we might have leverage to get our men out." It was insanity to steal back the traitor in the middle of a kill zone, but insanity was the only option left. "Fine," muttered, "but how do we reach him alive?" "By making think he's already won." The words hung like a dare in the poisoned air. They moved low, sliding through smoke and stone, every step a gamble, every sound a reminder of the hunters above them. A sniper team to the north shifted position. Blackwood signaled Parker with a hand. He set his rifle, exhaled slow, and dropped one with a clean shot. The second spun, confused, searching for a ghost in the haze before Parker's second round ended him. For a heartbeat, silence. Then more gunfire rained in retaliation, the ridges alive with unseen teeth. "Keep moving," barked. They crawled within meters of the helicopter, and Collins lay slack, IVs dripping, monitors flashing. Alive but no longer men, specimens. And then stepped into view, his pistol low, his expression smug. His gaze swept the smoke until it landed on them. The moment froze, fury boiled over. "You." Blinked, surprised only for a second. Then his smile returned, cold and certain. "You were always predictable, Mike," he said, voice carrying just enough. "Always the good soldier, always loyal, and loyalty," he sneered, "is the easiest thing to exploit." Blackwood rose slowly from the haze, rifle leveled, her eyes locked on. "I should have known it was you. Bosnia, the intel leak, my team." Tilted his head, almost amused. "You shouldn't take it so personally. We're making history here. Weapons that don't kill but control. Imagine wars ended without bloodshed." Blackwood's voice was ice. "You've killed plenty already." Shrugged, "Progress requires sacrifice." Behind him finally turned, his cold gaze settling on her. His smile deepened, recognition, anticipation. "Ah, Athena." His voice was smooth, accented, precise. "I wondered how long it would take you to crawl back into my valley." The name struck her like a knife. She hadn't heard it spoken aloud in years. Not since Bosnia. Not since the ambush that had left her with more ghosts than comrades. raised his rifle. "We're leaving with our men." Chuckled softly, almost kindly. "No, Lieutenant, you are leaving with nothing, because none of you will leave at all." His hand rose. Operators moved instantly. Precision, efficiency, a noose tightening around them. Blackwood's voice was calm, almost serene. "Then let's change the plan." She fired first. The kill zone erupted again. Smoke, fire, shouts, and chaos folding over itself. Drove forward, cutting down one operator with controlled bursts. Parker's rifle cracked sharp from overwatch, buying them seconds. Blackwood closed the distance on, her weapon steady, her heartbeat calm despite the storm around her. He raised his pistol, too slow. Her rifle butt slammed into his wrist, the weapon clattering to the ground. She forced him against the side of the helicopter, steel against betrayal. His eyes flashed fury. "You'll never make it out alive." "Then I'll make sure you don't either," she hissed. The valley howled, men fought, bullets cut the air, but in that single clash against Blackwood, watching with cold amusement, the war shrank into something smaller, personal, intimate, old betrayals colliding with new ones. And somewhere in the smoke, and Collins still breathed, their lives balancing on the knife edge of choices yet to be made. Why did betrayal always cut deeper than bullets? Why did the sight of a familiar face on the wrong side of the fight hurt more than any wound? His breath came in sharp bursts as Blackwood pressed him hard against the helicopter's metal skin. His eyes darted, fury and fear blending in equal measure. He had always seemed so unshakable at the FOB, crisp in uniform, confident in command. But here, with the valley alive with gunfire and chaos, he looked smaller. Her rifle pressed to his chest. His heart hammered beneath it. He tried to sneer, tried to hide the tremor in his jaw. "You won't shoot me," he hissed, though even he didn't sound convinced. "Why not?" Her voice was steady, chilling. "Because once upon a time you wore the same flag as me. Because we trained in the same halls. Because I used to believe men like you were incapable of this." He bared his teeth, a flash of arrogance returning. "Because I'm the only reason you're still alive. Bosnia, remember. You would have died with the others. I pulled you out." The words struck harder than she wanted them to. Memories crashed back. The valley in Bosnia, the confusion, the sweet smell, her men turning their weapons on each other. And then, yes, she remembered being dragged out by someone, blurred vision, half-conscious. She had never seen the face. "You," she whispered, the word heavy, raw. Smirk deepened. "Me, and you've been chasing ghosts ever since. You should thank me." Her finger tightened on the trigger. She wanted to end him, right there, right then. But another voice cut across the valley, cool and calm, commanding even amidst the storm. "Do it," called. He stood only yards away, smoke curling around his silver hair like a crown. His tone was quiet, but it carried, unnervingly controlled in the chaos. "Kill him, Athena. Put a bullet through his heart, and then watch what happens to your conscience." Her eyes flicked to him. He wasn't shouting orders to his men. He wasn't rushing to intervene. He stood as though the fight itself was secondary, as though this moment between her and was the true battlefield. "Seize the chance. Listen to him," he gasped. "You kill me, you prove him right. You become everything they say you are, paranoid, broken, dangerous even to your own." For a heartbeat her grip faltered. Not her weapon, not her stance, but her heart. She could feel the ghosts pressing in, whispering, Bosnia, Mogadishu, Baghdad, so many missions, so many losses, always circling back to her. Was it her? Did she carry death wherever she went? His voice cut sharp into her hesitation. "Blackwood, we need to move." He was 10 yards away, firing in controlled bursts, his men pinned against jagged stone. "Make a call." And that was when smiled. Because he knew the truth. This wasn't about guns. It wasn't about tactics. It was about forcing her to carry the weight of choice. Kill and damn herself in the eyes of the men. Spare him and leave the traitor free to strike again. Either way, the ghosts would multiply. Blackwood's jaw tightened. She pulled forward, away from the helicopter, away from his calculating stare. Her weapon still pressed hard against him, but she didn't pull the trigger. Not yet. Instead, she shoved him towards men. "Bind him," she ordered. Hesitated only a second before nodding. His men swarmed, zip-tying his wrists, forcing him to the ground. Smile never wavered. "Ah, you postpone judgment, admirable, predictable," he gestured to his men. "Advance." The valley erupted again. Suppressed rifles spat from the smoke. Bullets hissed past, sparking against stone. His voice thundered, "Fall back, cover, move." The SEALs shifted, dragging with them, and Collins lay abandoned near the helicopter, alive, barely, but unreachable under the torrent of gunfire. Every instinct screamed to go back for them, but every ounce of training told him it was suicide. Blackwood's breath came harsh in her mask. Her mind screamed against retreat. 2 men were there, still breathing, still savable, yet her body obeyed command. She fell back, laying down fire, forcing herself to survive. Because dead heroes save no one. They regrouped behind jagged stone outcroppings, smoke curling through cracks, bullets cutting the air above their heads. Checked their prisoner with a medic's precision, though the disgust in his eyes was unmistakable. "So it's true," he muttered. "You've been feeding them everything." Only smiled, even bound. "I gave them what they needed. You think you're soldiers, but you're pawns. At least I chose the winning side." Parker slammed a boot into his ribs. The older SEAL didn't protest. For once, didn't stop it either. Blackwood crouched low, catching her breath, her eyes never leaving the smoke where men moved like shadows. They weren't rushing. They weren't reckless. They advanced with patience, like predators certain their prey could not escape. Crawled beside her. "We can't hold this position, they'll flank us." She nodded, scanning the. "We need to get high ground, force them to chase us. They lose advantage if they can't hurt us where they want." "And our men," his voice cracked slightly. "Collins, the 2 left behind." Her jaw tightened. "We come back for them, or we die trying. But right now, if we stay, we die for nothing." Wanted to argue. His heart wanted to charge into the smoke, to drag his brothers out with his bare hands. But he saw the certainty in her eyes. He had seen it before, in leaders who had buried too many already. He gave the signal, "Move." The team scrambled, low and fast, weaving through stone and dust. Dragged along like unwanted baggage, sneering even as rocks tore at his knees. They climbed, lungs burning, hearts pounding, every step upward buying seconds against the tightening noose below. Gunfire followed, disciplined but less accurate now. The Russians weren't used to being controlled. Men fired back in short bursts, conserving ammo, keeping heads low. Finally, they reached a narrow ledge, a vantage overlooking the valley. For the first time since the ambush began, they had room to breathe. Below, men regrouped near the helicopter, and Collins were lifted aboard, unconscious, strapped like cargo. The Mi-17's engines growled, preparing to lift. And there he was, himself, standing calm, watching her. Their eyes locked across the distance, smoke curled between them. He raised a hand in a mocking salute. Not to the SEALs, to her, always her. Then he stepped aboard the helicopter. The engines roared. The bird lifted, tilting toward the north, toward some unknown stronghold deeper in the mountains. His hand dropped on her shoulder. "We can't chase them." "I know," she whispered. Her heart clenched as the helicopter dwindled into the sky, carrying her ghosts with it. For a long moment, the ledge was silent except for the sound of their own breathing. Men catching fragments of calm, though the storm hadn't passed. Then spoke, voice grim, "What do we do with him?" Bound, bruised, smiled like the devil himself. "You can't kill me. Not here, not now. You still believe in your rules." Blackwood stared down at him. Her hand twitched near her trigger. He was right. Killing him here would be easy, justified, but too easy. "No," she said finally, voice like stone. You'll face judgment, not mine, not's. You'll answer to the very men you betrayed. Laughed hollow and sharp. Then you've already lost because doesn't need me anymore. He has what he wanted and you'll never catch him. But even as his words echoed, Blackwood knew one truth cut deeper than his taunts. Wanted her alive, not dead, not yet. And that meant she was more dangerous to him than he dared admit. That night on the high ridge they built a temporary camp. No fire, no light, just silence broken only by whispered comms checks and the muted click of weapons being reloaded. Sat beside her, both of them watching the stars. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy but shared. Finally, he asked the question that had burned in him since the moment she arrived. "Who are you really?" She didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed fixed on the stars, as though the answers were written there. "I was Athena 12, she said softly. "Long before you knew my name, long before Bosnia, long before all of this." He waited patient. "I was trained for missions that didn't exist, to do things my country would deny, to fight wars even our allies weren't supposed to know about. But the truth is, I wasn't trained to win. I was trained to survive. And sometimes survival means living with ghosts heavier than bullets." For once the scar on his face softened just slightly. "Then why are you here? Why keep walking back into the fire?" Her lips pressed thin, her voice almost breaking. "Because someone has to. Because if I don't, then men like write history, and I can't let that happen." She finally turned, met his eyes. "But don't mistake me for a hero. Heroes die clean, I keep living dirty." The silence stretched again. Both of them carried ghosts. Both of them understood. And below, the valley slept, waiting for the next move. Why did silence feel heavier than the firefight? Why, when the guns had gone quiet, did the valley feel even more dangerous? The night clung to them like a second skin. No fire, no light, just men breathing through exhaustion, trying not to imagine the shadows moving beyond the ridge. Sat against stone, rifle across his chest, his face locked in grim focus. Every few minutes he glanced at, bound at the wrists and ankles, lying in the dirt with a smirk that hadn't yet faded. Blackwood stood apart, always apart. She watched the horizon where his helicopter had vanished hours earlier, her eyes fixed on nothing, yet unwilling to blink. She was replaying Bosnia. She always was. But tonight the memories clawed sharper, louder. She remembered the way her team had laughed that morning, oblivious to the trap. She remembered the almond scent hitting her lungs, the confusion setting in, her men turning on each other in the fog of terror. She remembered dragging herself through mud as bullets cracked past, hearing voices she trusted scream in madness. And she remembered him, standing calm at the edge of it all, studying her as though she were nothing but a subject in an experiment. Now, 7 years later, the look in his eyes hadn't changed. Finally broke the silence. "We'll need to move before dawn. If we stay on this ridge, we'll be sitting ducks." Nodded, checking over his medical kit. "Supplies are low, water's worse. If we chase him, we'll be running on fumes." Laughed softly from the dirt. "Chase him? You think you can? He's already gone, by now's halfway to the northern border, and he's not hiding, he doesn't need to." Parker kicked him in the ribs again. This time didn't stop him. The younger SEAL's voice cracked with rage. "You sold us out, you sold them out." His finger jabbed toward the empty darkness where and Collins had been taken. "How many others, huh? How many teams before us?" Coughed, blood flecking his lip, but his grin didn't falter. "All of them. Everyone who thought they could outplay him. Do you want the number, or will you sleep better not knowing?" The air grew heavier. Even hardened operators shifted uncomfortably. Betrayal was one thing, but betrayal that spanned years, that explained ghosts they'd never been able to bury, that was something else. Blackwood finally turned. Her voice was calm, but it cut sharper than any blade. "You've been his mouthpiece for years, feeding him intel, covering his tracks, keeping us blind." His eyes glinted in the starlight. "Because isn't the enemy, he's the future, fear as a weapon, War without armies. Imagine it, no blood spilled, no nations destroyed, just control. Quiet, efficient control. Her jaw tightened. You call that peace? I call it inevitable, he shot back. And unlike you, I chose to be on the side that wins. The silence after his words was suffocating. Finally spoke, his voice low, almost to himself. Then maybe winning isn't worth it. They moved before dawn. Shadows against rock, careful steps down the ridge, the prisoner dragged along by in Parker. Every man was running on exhaustion, on adrenaline that had begun to sour into dread. Blackwood led, scanning every ridge, every gully. She knew his mind too well. He wouldn't vanish into the night without leaving something behind, not carelessness, but breadcrumbs meant to lure them. And she found it. Too clear, too precise, leading north away from the valley. She crouched low, touching the dirt, knelt beside her, eyes narrowing. It's too clean. Exactly, she said. He wants us to follow. Then what's the alternative? Asked. Sit and wait while he takes in Collins wherever the hell he's going. Blackwood's eyes traced the. He expects us to choose speed over thought, but always plays 2 moves ahead. He knows we'll follow, which means. She let the thought hang, the weight of it pressing on them all. It's another trap, finished grimly. Slav cut the air. Finally you're learning, but too late. You can't win this game, not against him. Blackwood's hand twitched near her weapon. For a heartbeat, she wanted to silence him for good. But she forced herself to breathe, to push the anger down. Stood scanning the horizon. Trap or not, we move, because if we don't, they die in a lab. His jaw clenched. And I'm not burying more brothers without a fight. They followed the prince. North. Hours stretched into miles, every step heavier than the last. The sun rose harsh against the rock, draining sweat and strength. By midday, their canteens were near empty. Men moved slower, the prisoner stumbling more often. It was who noticed it first. A faint shimmer against the rocks ahead. He raised a hand, halting the column. Mirage. Blackwood raised her rifle, peering through the scope. Not a mirage. A device. Small, half-buried, its lens catching the sun. Tripwire camera, she murmured. Parker swore under his breath. We're being watched. Blackwood's voice was quiet, resigned. We've been watched since the moment we stepped into this valley. His eyes hardened. Then let them watch, we keep moving. But even as he said it, unease gnawed at him. Every ridge felt too still. Every shadow stretched too long. And then near dusk, they found the bodies. 3 men, American uniforms. Faces they didn't recognize, but patches that marked them as operators. Their bodies were arranged neatly against the rock, hands folded over their chests. Not mutilated, not desecrated, just displayed. Blackwood's breath caught. This is him, always him. He kills some, leaves others alive. The dead become warnings, the living become experiments. Crouched, closing one man's eyes. His jaw trembled as he whispered, God damn you. Only smiled from the dirt. He doesn't damn, he teaches. This time it was Parker who almost shot him. His rifle jerked up, finger twitching on the trigger, rage flooding his face. One more word. Blackwood's hand shot out, forcing his barrel down. Not like this, she said, her voice a rasp. We're not them. The younger SEAL's chest heaved. His eyes burned. But slowly, reluctantly, he lowered the weapon. Night fell hard. They camped in silence, the bodies buried shallow under stone. No one spoke over rations. No one wanted to. But when finally drifted into uneasy rest, Blackwood remained awake, staring into the dark, listening to steady breathing, to the faint shift of men trying to find comfort on hard rock. Her mind spun back to Bosnia again, to her team, to the name had called her, Athena. She hadn't heard it in 7 years. It wasn't just a name. It was designation, a program, a ghost her country existed, and if remembered it, it meant he hadn't just been her enemy. He had been her handler's mirror. The truth she had buried pressed harder against her chest. She hadn't told them. Not any of them. Because if she did, if she admitted what Athena 12 meant, they would never trust her again. But knew, and he would use it. At dawn, movement came from the shapes against the light just far enough not to fire, watching, waiting. "They're hurting us again," muttered, teeth grinding. "Always," Blackwood said softly. Spat into the dirt. "So what's the play?" Blackwood adjusted her rifle, eyes narrowing against the glare. "The play is to make them think they're winning, until they're not." And in her chest, ghosts stirred louder, Bosnia whispering, smiling, smirking in the dirt. The war wasn't about in Collins anymore. It wasn't about Overlook Valley. It wasn't even about her team. It was about rewriting the story that thought he had already finished. Why did the mountains feel alive? Why did every shadow stretch too long? Every gust of wind whisper like a voice meant only for her. They moved at first light. Thin air bit at their lungs as the terrain steepened, jagged rock giving way to narrow switchbacks and treacherous ledges. Led the point, eyes scanning for movement, while Parker and dragged behind them like a stubborn shadow. Blackwood brought up the rear, rifle steady, gaze restless. It wasn't just terrain they fought. It was time. Every mile meant and Collins were farther from rescue. Every hour meant grip tightening. The mountains rose higher, sharp peaks clawing at the sky. Thin mist clung to ravines, shifting like ghosts. Men moved quieter here, their boots scraping against stone, rifles loose in their hands. The silence was too perfect, too arranged. "Feels wrong," muttered, breaking the quiet. "Not a bird, not a damn sound." Blackwood agreed, knew this terrain better than they did, and silence wasn't emptiness, it was bait. The first sign came mid-morning. A crack echoed off the sharp, unmistakable sniper. The round missed head by inches, sparking stone. The team dove for cover, pressing into rock faces as more shots rang out. Not wild fire, calculated, forcing them low, hurting again. "Direction," Parker hissed. Blackwood scanned quickly, her eye to the scope. "South slope, 700 meters, high angle." "Can you get him?" asked. Her exhale was steady. She adjusted, squeezed. Her shot cracked, echo folding back through the valley. A figure tumbled from the rock, limbs scattering. "Silence." "Sniper down," she confirmed, though her voice held no triumph. It was too easy. One sniper in open terrain, it was style. And she was right. A hiss came seconds later, then a crack as a small canister clattered onto the rocks above them, bouncing down the slope. Smoke billowed thick and fast, not white, not gray, yellow. "Mask up," he barked. They sealed themselves fast. The gas coiled, hugging the rocks, choking the air. But this wasn't like before. This wasn't confusion. This was memory. Scom crackled alive, a voice threading through static. Not their net, someone else. "Michael." Froze. The voice was his brother, dead for 3 years. He ripped at his mask, trembling hands fumbling to tear it away, desperate to hear it clearer. But Blackwood was there in an instant, slamming the mask back onto his face, locking it tight. Her voice was steel. "Not real. Not him. Fight it." He gasped, shaking, eyes wild. But slowly her grip steadied him. His breathing calmed. The gas seeped thicker, doubled over, retching inside his mask, gagging as though invisible hands clawed his throat. Parker clutched his helmet, whispering names no one else recognized. And Blackwood. She heard them all. Her Bosnia team. Every voice, every scream, every order she gave that led to death. She heard, and Collins calling now too, their pleas threaded into the chorus of ghosts. "Athena." His voice cut through them all, smooth, patient, inside her head, not outside. Or was it outside, carried by comms hacked open, designed to torment? "You always carry them with you," he murmured. "Every loss, every failure. Do you know why, Athena? Because you don't fight for victory, you fight to punish yourself." Her hands trembled against her rifle. She clenched them. "You left them in Bosnia. You left them today, you will always leave them. It is who you are. Shut it down, growled through comms, fury cutting through his fear. But the voice only laughed softly, echoing across channels. Do you think she's your ally? She belongs to me. She always has. Blackwood's chest heaved. She wanted to tear the mask off, to scream into the mountains. But she forced her breathing steady, her voice level, if only to keep her men anchored. He's playing you, playing all of us. Don't give him ground. Easy for you, rasped, still gagging. You don't hear your family calling. Her eyes flicked to him. They were glassy, red, haunted. She wanted to tell him she did, that every step she took was haunted by voices she could never silence, but she bit it back. They needed steel, not confession. Minutes dragged, the gas thinned, dispersing in the wind. Slowly, clarity returned. Parker slumped against stone, bent over his knees, sat rigid, fists clenched white. Bound laughed, not hollow this time, real, full. Do you see now? You can't beat him. He doesn't need to kill you. He makes you kill yourselves. Parker lunged at him, blade flashing. This time stopped him, slamming the knife down, his own fury shaking through restraint. He doesn't get to win, not through you, not through us. Only smiled, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. They pushed higher by midday. The terrain narrowed into a jagged pass, cliffs looming over them like prison walls, too perfect for an ambush. Blackwood signaled halt. She crawled forward, scanning with her scope. There, wires stretched low across the rock, tripped charges. She followed their line with her eyes. Claymores, half hidden under loose stone, enough to shred the whole team if they stumbled forward blind. Classic funnel, she murmured. Cursed under his breath. They want us boxed in. They want us desperate, she corrected. They backtracked, climbing a parallel slope, legs screaming, bodies spent. Every step carried the weight of choice, forward into a minefield or higher into exhaustion. Neither promised survival. As dusk fell, they found a plateau, narrow but defensible. From here the valley stretched out below, silent and endless. The men collapsed in exhaustion, stripping gear, checking ammo. They had little left, one magazine each, barely enough water for the night. Sat bound at the edge of camp, his smirk faded now. His eyes watched Blackwood carefully, calculating. When finally drifted into sleep, whispered across the silence. He'll break you, you know, just like Bosnia, just like today. That's why he keeps you alive, not because you're a threat, because you're proof. Her head turned slowly, her eyes locking on his. Proof of what? That no matter what you do, no matter who you save, you'll always fail the ones who matter most. You'll always bury more than you bring home. Her jaw flexed, but she said nothing. Leaned forward, voice low. You know I'm right, and when the time comes we'll see it too. Then you'll lose him just like you lost the rest. She rose without a word, walked away from the camp's edge, her boots crunching against stone. The night air cut cold against her face. She stared out at the mountains, their silhouettes sharp against the moonlight. Her breath shook, her chest ached, but she held herself still, silent, because if she let herself break even for a moment, won. And she couldn't let him win, not yet. The next morning, the choice came to her. Scouts, 3 of them, Russian gear, moving fast across the lower valley, heading north, not toward them, ahead of them, guiding. Blackwood crouched low, glassed them through her scope. Wasn't running, he was waiting, drawing them deeper, always deeper. Slid beside her, eyes narrowing. He wants us to follow. Yes, she murmured. So we stop, we turn back, get air support, call this in. Her eyes stayed on the scouts. By the time support comes and Collins are gone and vanishes again, another ghost, another Bosnia. He looked at her, really looked, and in his eyes she saw the question he hadn't dared ask. Why is this so personal for you? She breathed in slow. The words pressed against her throat. She had hidden them for years, but hiding hadn't stopped the ghosts. Because I was Athena 12, she said at last, her voice a whisper meant only for him. His brow furrowed. Athena. She nodded, eyes wet but steady. A program that doesn't exist, missions that were never written, soldiers trained to survive no matter what, to fight wars even our allies weren't meant to know about. I was one of them, was the other side. He learned us, studied us, and Bosnia was his test. She finally turned, meeting his gaze. That ambush wasn't just bad intel. It was a design. He used us, used me, and when everyone else died, he left me alive for one reason. His throat tightened, to haunt you. Her voice broke, to claim me. For the first time, didn't see steel in her. He saw the fracture lines, the weight she carried, and for the first time he understood why I hadn't killed her in Bosnia or in the valley yesterday. She wasn't his enemy, she was his experiment. And experiments weren't meant to end. Why did the mountain feel less like terrain and more like a theater? Why did every turn, every ledge feel staged, as if was pulling curtains back one at a time? They moved before dawn, following the scouts' trail north. Led again, rifle raised, shoulders squared though exhaustion dragged at every step, and Parker trailed behind, their prisoner between them. Stumbled often, but never lost the grin carved across his face, a grin that dared them to break him before had the chance. Blackwood walked apart, eyes scanning constantly, ears tuned to more than the wind. She felt the weight of her confession pressing on her chest, the words she'd finally said to the night before. Athena 12. A designation, not a name. A truth she had spent years burying under layers of silence. And now it was out. He hadn't spoken since. He hadn't judged, hadn't questioned, but his silence said enough. He was weighing her, trusting her in battle perhaps, but beyond that, she wasn't sure. The trail wound higher into cliffs that narrowed into single-file paths. They moved like shadows, boots scraping rock, breath frosting in the thin air. It was mid-morning when hissed, contact. They froze. Up ahead, sprawled across the rock, was a man in American gear. Helmet cracked, rifle dangling from limp fingers. Blood dried dark against his chest. Parker moved first, dropping low, scanning for signs of life. He's gone. His voice was grim. But Blackwood's eyes were on the insignia, a patch sewn to the shoulder, one she recognized. Her chest went cold. Athena, she whispered. His head snapped toward her. One of yours. Her throat tightened. One of us. There weren't supposed to be any left. His laugh cut through the silence. Weren't supposed to, but keeps his trophies. The men turned, anger flickering in their eyes. Especially, what does that mean? Grinned wider. It means she hasn't told you the truth, not the whole of it. Athena wasn't just training, it was breeding, selection, psychological sculpting. They built her to be exactly what needed, and now, he's finishing what they started. Parker lunged forward, slamming a fist into his jaw, snapping his head back. Shut up. But the words had already sunk their teeth in. His gaze stayed locked on her, not accusatory, but searching. Tell me he's lying. Her lips parted, breath trembling. She wanted to deny it, to bury it again, but ghosts didn't die by silence. Her voice cracked. He's not. The team went still. Her eyes burned, but she forced herself to continue. The Athena program was never about skill alone. It was about breaking us, stripping us down until survival was the only instinct left. I was one of 12. He, she glanced down at the corpse, was another, but he wasn't the enemy. He was the observer, watching, testing, always watching. Muttered a curse under his breath. Parker's face twisted in disbelief. And his jaw clenched, though his voice came low. So what are you to him? Her silence was answer enough. Chuckled through blood on his teeth. She's his masterpiece. The plateau they reached by noon stretched wide, open to the sky but ringed by high ridges on 3 sides. A killing box, knew instantly, but it was the only route forward. They crossed fast, rifles sweeping arcs. Every rock felt like a scope aimed at their skulls. Every gust of wind felt like breath on the back of their necks. At the far end they found it. A cage. Steel bolted into the rock itself, and inside barely conscious, bruised but alive. Collins was nowhere, and Parker rushed forward, hands tearing at the lock. Blackwood held back, scanning. Too neat, too visible, too easy. "Stop," she said sharply. But it was too late. The moment touched the lock, a voice boomed across the plateau, amplified by unseen speakers. Smooth, calm, always predictable. Yes. The men froze, hands shook against the steel. From the ridges, shadows rose, figures, dozens. Russian operators, rifles trained downward, surrounding the plateau like wolves circling prey. Barked cover, but there was nowhere to go. No rock, no wall, just open sky above, rifles above, and the cage at their feet. Laughed, his voice cutting sharp against the echo. "Welcome to the end game." And then himself stepped onto the ridge. Tall silver hair catching the light, posture regal even in combat gear. His eyes found her immediately. Only her. "Athena," he called, his voice carrying effortlessly. At last the curtain falls. The men bristled, weapons rising, but his eyes never left hers. "You brought them far, farther than I expected, but still," he spread his hands, smiling, "you brought them exactly where I wanted." His rifle snapped toward him. "You won't walk away from this." His gaze flicked briefly to him, then back to her, as though were nothing more than a noise at the edge of the stage. "You see, Athena, they still believe this is about soldiers, about battles, about victories, but you know better, you've always known it's about choice. The choice that breaks you." Her chest heaved, the memory of Bosnia clawing back, her men screaming, her lungs burning. He raised a hand. The Russians above cocked their rifles in unison. "Choose, Athena, step forward, return to what you were made for, or stay with them," his smile deepened, "and watch them die for you." The plateau went silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Her men shifted, tense. His voice came low, tight. "Don't listen, he doesn't get to own you." Bound but grinning, shouted across the silence. "Do it, Blackwood, step forward. You know it's the only way to end this." Her pulse thundered, every nerve screamed. Her hand tightened on her rifle, but her knees felt weak. Because he was right. Didn't want the SEALs, didn't want the mission, didn't even want. He wanted her. The ghosts pressed closer. Bosnia, Mogadishu, Baghdad, every mission, every failure. And now this plateau, another stage in the theater he'd built around her. His voice cut sharper, desperate now. "Look at me, Blackwood, look at me." Her eyes snapped to him. "You're not Athena anymore, you're not his. You've carried ghosts long enough. Don't let him write the ending." For the first time in years, something cracked inside her. Not fear, not guilt, but rage, pure molten rage. She stepped forward. The rifles above tightened, eyes widened. But she didn't step toward. She stepped in front of. Her voice cut the plateau like steel. "If you want me, you'll take me on my terms, not yours." Smile faltered, just slightly. And for the first time she saw it, the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. The stage wasn't his anymore. It was hers. What did silence mean on a battlefield? Was it mercy, or was it the pause before everything shattered? The plateau held its breath. Stood above them, his Russians lining the ridges, rifles angled downward like spears ready to fall. And the others crouched low, fingers white against their triggers, knowing one wrong twitch meant slaughter. Groaned faintly in the cage, still alive but fatting. And Blackwood, she stood alone at the front, a single figure between two worlds. His voice rolled down from the ridge, calm, measured, as if this moment had been rehearsed 100 times in his mind. "Do you see now? Even your defiance serves me. You've stepped forward. You've admitted what you are, Athena, mine." His words dug like hooks into her chest, but she forced her breathing steady, eyes locked on him. "You built the stage, but you never learned the truth." He tilted his head, curious, confident still. And what truth is that? Her voice carried, low but unwavering. I don't belong to you. I never did. Bosnia didn't break me. It forged me. You didn't leave me alive because you owned me. I survived because I was never yours to claim. The Russians above shifted uneasily, their rifles trembling in hands that suddenly didn't feel steady. Smile flickered, faint but real. Brave words, but they don't change the choice in front of you. Step back with them and they all die. Step forward to me and they live. Her pulse thundered in her ears. His voice came from behind, low, urgent. Don't give him what he wants. Cackled from where he knelt, bloodied and bound. She already has, look at her, she was his from the start. Bosnia proved it, everything since has proved it. This isn't a fight, it's a reunion. Parker spat, voice ragged with fury. Then let's end it now. Give me one clean shot. No, snapped, eyes still locked on Blackwood. This is her fight, not ours. The air grew heavier, pressing against their lungs, their skin, their hearts. And then Blackwood moved. She let her rifle drop, let it clatter against the stone. The sound cracked through the silence like lightning. Every weapon on the ridge twitched, stiffened behind her, grinned wider. She raised her empty hand slowly, one step forward, another toward. The Russians tensed, smile returned calm and assured. Yes, at last, the war ends where it began. But then she spoke, her voice sharp as steel. You forgot something. He blinked just slightly. She lifted her chin. I'm not stepping forward to you, I'm stepping forward for them. And in that moment, a flicker no longer than a heartbeat, she dropped. Not surrender, not collapse, controlled, deliberate. She fell to one knee, hand flashing to her boot, pulling the small, concealed signal flare she had carried since the valley. Before the Russians could fire, she cracked it against the rock. Red fire burst skyward, streaking against the pale morning. A call not to him at all, but to the sky. A roar followed, a sound no Russian rifle could silence. Aircraft, American, closing fast. His face shifted at last, the calm peeling away, replaced by sharp anger. He shouted orders in Russian, his men scattering, some firing wildly, others ducking back. The plateau erupted in chaos. Bellowed cover, as he and Parker unleashed fire upward, rounds snapping at silhouettes on the ridge. Dragged from the cage, bullets sparking against steel around him. Blackwood didn't fire. She didn't need to. Her flare had done its work. Above, jet engines screamed as two fighters broke through the clouds, their shadows cutting across the ridges. Missiles streaked, explosions tore through the cliffs. Rocks shattered, bodies flung like. The Russians broke, their formation collapsing in panic. And through it all stood unflinching, the firelight dancing against his face. He locked eyes with her, his lips curling into a faint smile, even as his men fell around him. He raised a hand, not in surrender, not in command, but in acknowledgement. You think this ends me, his voice carried faint even through the thunder, but it only begins you. And then a blast of stone and fire swallowed his ridge. When the dust cleared, he was gone. Silence fell again, this time not staged, not weaponized, just silence. The jets banked away, leaving contrails across the sky. Smoke curled from shattered ridges. The Russians who survived had fled, and the plateau belonged to them again. Lowered his rifle, chest heaving. Crouched over, pressing water to his lips, whispering steady words. Parker paced like a caged animal, adrenaline still thrumming. Lay bound in the dirt, his grin finally gone, replaced with something emptier. And Blackwood stood at the edge of the plateau, staring at the horizon where had stood. Her chest felt hollow, not with victory, not with triumph, but with the weight of what hadn't ended, what never truly would. Stepped beside her, his voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it. You saved us. She shook her head. No, I delayed him. He studied her profile, the lines of exhaustion, of scars too deep for skin to hide. So what now? Her eyes stayed on the horizon. Now we prepare, because he'll come again, not for all of us, for me. He wanted to argue, to tell her it was over, but he knew better. The look in her eyes wasn't fear, it was knowing. She turned then, finally meeting his gaze. Her voice softened, fragile but resolute. The ghosts never leave, but maybe I can stop them from multiplying. He nodded slowly. Then we carry them together. The words hung between them. Not a promise, not absolution, but something close to hope. They moved down the mountain that night, carried between them, dragged in silence. The valley stretched behind them and broken. And Blackwood walked last, her boots crunching softly against stone, the night sky opening above her. She thought of Bosnia, of the men she'd lost, of his voice, his claim, his shadow. She thought of how close she had come to stepping into his orbit forever. But she hadn't, not today. Today she had chosen. Not for herself, not even for survival, but for them, for the ones who still breathed, for the ones who still fought beside her. Her chest ached with it, a wound that would never close. But maybe wounds didn't always mean weakness. Maybe sometimes they meant you had endured. The mountains fell behind. The horizon opened wide. And as dawn rose, pale light spilling across their path, she finally let herself whisper words that had lived inside her since Bosnia. They don't own me. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.